Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Well, we've got the information for you right here. And Dave's going to tell you about it.
Absolutely, guys. We use this awesome application called Anchor FM. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First off, it's free.
And who doesn't like free?
Yeah, free's huge. That's what got us involved with it. Second of all, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. So you don't need all those fancy gadgets. You can have them if you want them, but not absolutely necessary.
Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and many other platforms.
Which is great. More people can hear us.
Who doesn't want more people to hear us?
I mean, I like to be heard.
I like to talk.
Another great thing is you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Like 0 people could listen to you and you could still possibly make some money.
That's amazing.
How does that even happen? It's everything you need right here to make a podcast in one place.
It's a one-stop shop and it's all you need. Anchor FM.
Yeah, so you guys, if you want to start this podcast, go to anchorfm.com to get started. What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Apogee Podcast. My name is David Carter.
And I am Kevin Harrington.
Kevin, what's up, dude?
What's up, buddy?
Dude, so nice to be back in the studio.
Again, part 2.
Yeah, so we added a new thing to the studio just now. We now are even more official with headphones.
I like headphones.
I know, I have to get used to it.
You will.
You literally sound like, you know, when you're hearing yourself through, I don't know, a recording.
Once you
do every week. I hear myself, you know, through these podcasts. I'm like, do I really sound like that? That's what I'm hearing right now through these headphones.
Once you finally get used to hearing your voice, that's when you can finally accept yourself.
I'll do my best. Thank you, Kevin.
Please, those are words of the wise.
I appreciate that. Dude, how's the gym going? I hear you got back into CrossFit the last couple weeks.
I'm going. I went the first week. Second week didn't go so hot because I was sore and blown up.
Yeah.
So, but no, we have a plan, and we're going to stick to it coming this Monday. So by the time you hear this podcast, I will have already been back at the gym regularly.
My wife signed me up for a competition already this year.
I heard. I like this. I really do.
I just did the math. It's 12 weeks away. So I was telling Harrison today, I was like, I should probably start training again, or like really training if I don't want to embarrass myself.
I don't. That's so amazing to me because I mean I like that idea. It's like it's a goal for you to get ready and a goal for you for something to do that's attainable.
Sure.
But I mean, obviously you don't want to embarrass yourself, so obviously you want to train. But
well, I'm not really worried about that, man. It's not like I've done tons of these competitions, but this is my first one back from that major knee surgery, so that's what I'm.
Just don't place last.
Well, thank you. You're going to be there, hopefully shooting.
I will be. Hopefully,
you'll be there to be my support. All right, let's get into today's episode. So we've got another lovely lady coming to us from Anderson, South Carolina, your hometown.
Yep, we are.
Yep.
There seems to be a theme going on here because we've talked to a lot of Anderson College students.
There's a lot of strong people that come out of Anderson.
So there you
go. We've got Madeline Helms.
The reigning fittest of the Upstate.
Yes.
2019, if I'm correct.
2019, 2020.
Yeah, we'll let it in there. We'll grandfather that in.
They told me that I could keep it.
Yeah, there you go. Until somebody takes it from you, it's yours.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's what I'm talking about. She's done a couple sanctioned events. She did Wadapalooza, RX Female in 2019?
2020.
2020? Oh, it was this past year.
Yep.
You were on your way to Canada this year for Atlas Games.
Yep, landed in Canada to compete as a team in the elite division. Got off of the plane onto the bus and then found out the competition was canceled thanks to COVID.
Did you guys stick around for a while? We were
a 4-person team, and all 3 of my other team members got plane flights home the next morning at like 6 a.m. So we ended up getting an earlier plane flight, but at least having a full day in Canada so that we could like go around this, like, and enjoy it. Yeah.
Cool. What part of Canada was it in?
Montreal.
Okay. I've never been to Montreal.
Beautiful area.
Oh, we would absolutely go back.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Cool. And then you said, was there one more that you had done? Or was that it?
That was it for 2020.
That was it for 2020.
And everything shut down.
And everything shut down. All right. So, Madeline, is this your first podcast?
This is.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're excited to have you on. We had a lot of people when we pulled you up. And a lot of people were like, oh, we can't wait for this one. So.
Oh man.
Yeah, man. No pressure.
I know.
Well, thanks for taking your time to come and sit down with us.
For sure. I'm glad to be here.
So, tell us about Madeline Helms.
Well, I am 23.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated from Anderson, like you said. Still live in Anderson. Coaching there. I've created my own nutrition and training business. And then I'm an exercise specialist with a chiropractic office in Greenville, so Carolina Active Health, if anyone's interested in that. And so, yeah, I'm a little all over the place all the time. And then training throughout my day whenever I get a chance to.
Mm-hmm.
I have 4 fur babies at home.
Cool.
Yeah.
All dogs?
No, 2 dogs, 2 kittens.
Okay.
We almost fostered a dog, and then thankfully someone else fostered it.
I saw you post that.
So we were about to commit to it, but we don't have to now, thankfully.
Well, that's great.
What kind of dog was it?
It was a pit bull.
Oh, a pitty.
Yeah,
well, you already have pitties,
We
don't
have
you?
2 pitties,
Yeah.
and all of the pitties that they were about to put down, or all the dogs they're about to put down were all pit bulls. So I'm like, we can't let that happen.
No, you can't.
Save the day.
Pitties are such a misunderstood breed.
No, they're little babies.
They are.
Oh my gosh.
Well, they're called the nanny dog. That's the nickname of them.
Is it?
Yes. Petey on our Little Rascals was a pit bull.
Yeah.
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 So, and
I
they're
thought
called
he was
the
an
nanny
American bulldog.
No, he was a pitty. He was
Really?
an American. He was a pitty, and basically that's why you could leave your kids with that type of dog, and they called them the nanny dogs because, and if anybody came along that the dog didn't know, he would
Yes.
protect the kids.
Yeah.
So that's why they always had Petey around.
I learn everything new every time Kevin's around. There's some random fact that I learn.
I just watched too much TV growing up as a kid.
It's good though. I like to learn new things.
Oh, well, thanks.
Yeah, it's even better coming from you. Madeline, tell us a little bit about your upbringing. So are you from Anderson originally, or?
No, so I'm from the Rock Hill area up toward Charlotte, still
Sure.
in South Carolina.
Mhm.
Grew up there my whole life. Went to school there, moved here for school. Originally was a education major, quickly switched to kinesiology, so my upbringing was not any athletic sports related whatsoever. But yeah, I don't know.
So the current reigning fittest woman in the Upstate did not play sports growing up.
0 sports.
That's amazing.
When I was very little, I played soccer as like a little kid when you would just run and like kick everyone's shins because you just wanted the ball.
Sure,
I
yeah.
did that. I did gymnastics for like I think a week. Like 1 week. I have one picture of me doing it. I don't think I enjoyed it.
So what kind of stuff did you do growing up then for fun or outside of school?
So, well, outside of school and middle school and high school, I actually did band. So I was a huge band nerd. Did marching band for 5 years. Played in college. My brother's a band director now, so I like kind of followed in his footsteps. So he always did that. So that's what I did as like extracurricular activities. So marching band for a while was as active as I got. I was like a couch potato. Didn't get active until probably like halfway through high school. I started being more active intentionally to lose weight. I was a chunky kid.
So you were overweight.
I was overweight. I was never like to a point where I'm like it was super unhealthy, but I wasn't at a place where I'm like healthy. Again, it was somewhere in between there.
Okay.
So never like off the deep end or anything, but yeah, so I started running because my brother also ran, so I naturally fell into his footsteps with that as well, and started running, started just kind of going to like a regular gym for a while, and lost the weight, and then that's what really got me into everything, because I did all my own research as far as like, well, how should I eat, how should I exercise, and then from there I just started learning more to the point where I was training for half marathons and that kind of thing. And then when I got into school, I was an education major, but then all my friends were in kinesiology and they were telling me about what they were learning in classes, and I'm like, this is so cool. So I was like, screw it, I'm switching.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So did you have a plan at that point what you wanted to do with kinesiology, or you were just interested in it?
No, I was just interested in it. I kind of knew from the beginning, even as an education major, that I wanted to be a personal trainer. So that was my plan the whole time. Even halfway through school, I considered dropping out and just getting certified as a personal trainer and a CrossFit coach, and was going to call it good after that, and then ended up being convinced to stay in. And after like looking back on it, I'm so glad that I did.
Sure. So you're pretty young. You're 23.
Yes.
So what year did you graduate from college then?
2019.
Oh, okay, so you're fresh out.
Yeah, going on 2 years-ish.
So did you start CrossFit then while you were in college?
Yeah, I started my sophomore year in college.
So how did you find CrossFit then?
I was, like I said, a big runner prior to doing CrossFit, so I was training for half marathons, always running, and then I ended up having a knee injury so that I couldn't really run much at all, and so I was kind of still doing like HIIT workouts. I would kind of sub those in with my runs, so I was still kind of doing a little bit of that, and then a friend, Grayson Schubert, tapped me on the shoulder in, I think, geometry class one day and was like, hey, I do CrossFit. You might enjoy it. You should come. She and I like barely knew each other. We had like this one class together. I'm like, all right, cool. So she picked me up on a Saturday, and we went to Electric City, where I'm at now.
Sure.
I love how you just got the tap. It's like, here's the tap.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Hey, girl,
she literally sat right behind me,
me.
tapped me on the shoulder, and I was like, sure, I'll do whatever. Yeah, let's go. And so I went on a Saturday. We did the workout, Filthy 50. And so
that's everybody's first workout.
Yeah.
Everybody's workout.
And I mean, naturally, it's a long grinder, which is the thing I'm the best at and I enjoy. So of course I'm like, this is awesome.
Sure.
And so that's from there. I remember calling my parents, I think either that night or the night after, and was like, hey, this is really expensive, but I have to do this. I don't have a choice. I just have to do this. So fork over the money.
Yeah. So they did it.
I'm just kidding. But no, oh yeah, they were of course supportive about it. But
hey mom, hey dad.
Yeah, I just remember telling them like, you know, I'm like not asking, but being like, hey, this is something like I'm gonna do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I love it.
Have your parents seen you work out? I mean,
oh yeah, they try to come to every single competition, even like the smallest ones, and I'm like, don't drive down here for this.
Right.
My mom came to Wadapalooza with us, and I did not expect that, and she like was thrilled to come down. So yeah.
Did she come to see you at Fittest of the Upstate?
Yeah, I think they both did actually. I'm trying to think. Yeah, they both came to Fittest of the Upstate and watched. I mean, pretty much every competition that they're able to come to, they'll come down here for all of it.
So being a band member in college and high school,
mm-hmm.
and never really having a fitness background until you started running and doing long runs.
Yeah.
Because that's the first time I met you was at Electric City.
Yeah.
And you come running up, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then,
I remember that. Yeah.
Because I was impressed that you had runner's legs.
Yeah.
Obviously. And so, but what did your parents think the first time they saw you do CrossFit, like lift weights or?
I honestly don't remember their first impression because I think they were already like knew when I got so into running that like Christmas morning I would wake up and I'd have to go for like a long run before we could do any Christmas activities. So they were so used to me already being like all into something active, and I throughout all of that I helped them become more healthy as far as exercise and eating better and stuff like that prior to going to college. So they were kind of already used to that. So I think I don't really know what their initial reaction was.
So how many turkey trots have you done on Christmas Day?
That'd be Thanksgiving
That's
Day.
Thanksgiving.
Oh, Thanksgiving. How many turkey trots have you done on Thanksgiving?
Honestly, I think just one.
Just one?
How many have you done, Kevin?
0.
0.
Wow.
I am consistent at least.
2021.
Hey, no.
The year of the turkey trot.
Dude, I accidentally got talked into running a 5K.
Accidentally.
I didn't really realize I was doing it until afterwards.
They gave you beer at the end.
Yeah, well, no, it was like a Saturday.
Drink ticket.
Yeah.
No, it was a Saturday weekend, and it was at CrossFit actually. And so we went and I did the math in my head because I knew how long a mile is, and I'm like,
Oh yeah.
wait a minute. So it
5K.
wound up being like a 5K, and I was like, okay,
So you did it.
I did it.
Nice.
I'd love to get back and do that again, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. But I was proud of myself. It's one of those things because I'm not a runner. I mean, I like I told you before, everybody else knows I played a little bit of soccer, you know, but anyway.
So I'm trying to get a timeline here. So when Grayson tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey girl, you want to come do CrossFit with me?
Yeah.
What year was that?
It was 2016.
Okay.
2016.
Okay, so you weren't like fresh when you went to Fittest of the Upstate in 2019. You've been doing it for like 3 years.
I've been doing it for I guess right under 3 years. Yeah.
Okay.
So when did you learn, or when did you realize that you were actually pretty good at this?
I want to say right away, but of course, I also think back to hanging on the bar, trying to do like knee raises and just swinging all over the place. So probably not right away. But in my head, I think I'm just such a competitive, like all-in person that immediately I was like, all right, this is cool. I want to be the best. Like I want to, or at the best that I can be at it. Not necessarily the best, but so immediately I'm thinking like, I want to work on all these things because I want to nail them down. And so right away, I didn't really care what my ability level was at the time. I just knew I was like going to be all in.
That's awesome.
So what came to you first, the gymnastics part or the lifting part?
No, not the gymnastics. I still don't think I've really actually gotten there yet.
Yeah.
But definitely the lifting.
Yeah.
And I came from an endurance running background, so at least like leg wise, the strength was there. So I picked up that stuff a lot better than the gymnastics because the upper body strength was not there as much, and the coordination with that, like, yeah, I still feel like I'm a newbie, but we're getting there.
But you have two of the main things. You have the bottom, and then you have the core, the engine, the endurance part. I mean, that's half the battle right there for a lot of people.
The majority of the battle.
Gotta figure out the rest of it.
Yeah. So I mean, somebody going into CrossFit who's never, on the outside looking in, what would be like your first word of advice to them? Who would you tap on the shoulder and say, "Hey, this is what you need to know"?
That's a good question. I think just like to really have fun with it and to not put like too much pressure on like figuring things out. Like learning double unders, people stress themselves out about whipping the back of their legs, but I would like just sit there for 10 minutes whipping myself, and I don't remember really getting frustrated with it. I just knew that I was learning something new. It was going to take a while. And so it's kind of like just trusting that, like, if you just keep working on it, it'll come.
That's the biggest thing I always tell people. It's sometimes with some of these skills like double unders, you're not going to just go to class and learn how to do double unders, right? You've got to learn to do stuff like that outside of class. And honestly, man, for things like double unders, if you just commit, like you just said, 10 minutes a day to something like that, people will get it so much quicker than they think.
That's what I tell everyone when, like, I remember double unders, handstand walking every day when I was done training. I would go in the back corner of the room and like record myself just trying to walk and then falling, and I just would fall over and over, but I would give myself 10 minutes. I'd set a timer, and then eventually it just kind of like clicked. Yeah,
it's that whole neuromuscular junction.
I remember the first time I got double unders correctly right.
Yeah, and once you get it, it's just like, just hopping on a bike. I mean, once you got it, you got it. So.
It's a struggle still, though.
Yeah. So what was it like? You started at Electric City, and as you know, I think you've been listening to this podcast. We had Allison Stahl on. Yeah. A few episodes back. I guess it was actually back in 2020 we had her on. Obviously, she worked out there when you started there. What was it like having a woman like that right then and there who's already elite level?
So you mentioned starting Electric City. I actually started at a different gym, Foothills CrossFit. It was in Anderson.
I remember that place.
Some of my best friends are from there that I still see all the time, keep in touch with, but they ended up shutting down after about a year of me doing CrossFit, and so I switched over to Electric City at that point. Naturally just being in Anderson. But prior to that, I'd already known about Allison, because I remember Grayson, who tapped me on the shoulder, we were at lunch the next day, because like I'm sitting here like all about CrossFit now because I went to one class, and so she's showing me Allison's Instagram page, and I remember this one picture of her that Kevin took of like pulling a rope or pushing a sled or something like that, and I remember seeing her arms, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that is so cool. So I'd already known her from the very beginning, and I asked her to get coffee with me one day while I was still at Foothills before I started training with her, and we sat down, and I was like asking her basically how she trained to get to where she is now, because immediately I knew starting CrossFit that I wanted to like do competitions. I did one competition like 2 months after starting, could barely snatch anything horribly, but I knew that was something I wanted to get better at, so I'm asking her like how she got to where she is now, and I just remember talking to her about that. So then going to Electric City and getting to train with her, I mean, it's great to have someone next to you, and at that time was so much better, like there's no way I'd ever be able to keep up with her, and so that was like a goal, oh man, well,
constantly pushing
I want to do that. So I always knew that I could do better than what I was doing if I just worked that hard. Yeah
That's awesome. Well, they always say, train with somebody who's better than you.
Oh yeah,
that's the only way you're going to progress. If you're always the best person in the room, it's hard to.
I've always admired Allison for that, because I don't think she realizes it or not, but she is the gold standard for the Upstate as far as I'm concerned. She's put her work in, and she's put her time in, and obviously she's good at what she does.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's very humble about it, and she's still learning.
Yeah.
She'll still say that.
One of the most humble people I've ever met.
And I really appreciate it because she and I have very similar backgrounds when we look at, like, we came from running backgrounds. We had similar, like, as far as eating, just mental issues with that, mental blocks, and then coming into CrossFit. I was able to relate a lot to that kind of stuff. And so it was great to have that just in the gym, someone that I could just ask a question to, and we could relate very easily.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about that, the weight and the nutrition part.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's something that a lot of females, and males, we all run into this thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially getting into college, becoming a little bit more independent and realizing, I have to feed myself.
Yeah. You could go in the dining hall and have as much chocolate milk as you want.
Exactly. Freshman year is not usually good for a lot of people. No. So at what point during college and getting into CrossFit where you're like, all right, I'm going to dial into my nutrition? And tell us a little bit about the struggles you've had with nutrition before that.
Yeah. So I actually really dialed in high school. So as soon as I started to run and started to want to lose weight, get healthier, I started learning more about nutrition in that time frame. And then, so getting into college, I kind of already had that framework to the point where I would go into the dining hall and not worry about, the freshman 15 or anything like that. I already had the framework for that. But I think even up until now, I've always still had just kind of this mental block with food. I think every female especially never really loses this as far as, am I eating too much? Am I eating too little? Do I need to exercise? There's always kind of that in the back of your head. So even now I still struggle with that. And of course with what I do, I'm helping people with that every single day. And I'm glad that I started so early, even prior to even starting CrossFit, focusing on eating whole natural foods. Just because that at least laid the framework coming into it.
So did you have any formal training in nutrition, or was a lot of this self-taught?
Yeah, the majority of it self-taught. I've done the precision nutrition certification, but that's obviously more recent than me being in high school.
Right.
We had classes on it in school, so I had formal training in that. But aside from that, prior to learning it in class and with my certification, I have dove into like podcasts. Like that's all that I'm interested in as far as learning, because that's a big thing that even after school that I really miss is being able to learn new things. And so that's the one thing that I can never get enough of.
Yeah. I'm the same way when it comes to stuff like that. Nutrition, anything medical, anything physical. Podcasts are an amazing thing.
Oh, I love them.
I mean, you can learn so much on podcasts, and I like that they're not regulated either.
Yeah.
So you just get all kinds of information that you wouldn't really find anywhere else unless you were like all about Google Scholars or something.
Yeah.
Reading like 300-page papers or whatever.
Oh yeah, my podcast app is one of the most used apps on my phone. If you scroll over and it pulls up your like top 5 apps,
right? That's
like number 2 or 3. Like get to the top. I'm always listening to them.
So I want to go back to something you touched on, the freshman 15. What do you think is behind that?
I think it has a lot to do with what he said about going to school and having your independence, and just if you have a dining hall, you can go into it and literally eat whatever you want, and you've got like a 4-hour gap until they close, and you could stay there all day long. And so at least from what I was able to see people doing is they would just load up their plates with whatever they wanted. They're independent. Nobody's telling them what to do, and you don't really know how to regulate it at that point. As far as being a freshman, as you get through college, you start to learn like, oh, I can't do this.
Do you think it's something that we should? I had this conversation the other day with a friend of mine, and she was telling me, oh, they don't teach home ec in school anymore. And I was like, I understand why that is, because it's not very PC, because teaching people to sew or anything like that. Yeah. But I mean, I could see it coming back, and maybe that being a part of it. I mean, I think it's very, I think with the way things are now, with how, the aesthetics of look and how we need to be healthy, and with COVID coming around.
Oh yeah.
I think it's something that schools should look into is the proper eating and muscle training and all that kind of stuff as a part of PE. Because I mean, you are right. I mean, if you come from a background where you're not taught how to eat properly, and you get into college, and like you said, you got 4 hours, and you could do whatever you want. You're going to do what comforts you most, and that's going to be food for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of people, too, I think, they come from a background where, you know, they don't have food readily available all the time. And that's sad. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they obviously are able to go to school when they go to college. So they're just eating it because it's there.
Yeah. Part of the problem, I think, because I know in school, when I went to school in like middle school and I think high school too, we had nutrition-ish classes, like our health classes. They touched on it briefly, but I think part of the problem, especially for younger people, once you get older, you've been through enough life to know how things affect you. But for like, let's say a freshman in college, if they've been fit their whole life and they've just had a great metabolism that's helped them out, they aren't going to care. Like they could have all the knowledge in the world about it, but until it's affecting them directly, they're not going to actually have the motivation to change anything. And so it's kind of like for me personally, I was an overweight child. So to lose weight, I know that I needed to eat healthy. And then if I don't do that, I know exactly where I'm going to be again.
Right.
So it's kind of like I was directly impacted by it, which is why I'm so emotionally connected to it versus some people. I think it's hard just to learn it and just start going in with it if you haven't had a reason to.
So as a nutrition coach, what is your opinion of the BMI?
Oh, I think you should just throw it out the window.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that for people that are much more overweight, then it's more applicable. But for people that are leaner, or I mean, not even just lean, if you're just a smaller individual or muscular, if you do any kind of sport, I think that you just don't even look at it because it just it's like two numbers and that doesn't really take anything else into account.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think that's probably one of the worst things that health has brought forth in the past 15 to 20 years is the BMI.
Yeah.
Because you can be, I mean, yes, I'm overweight. I know I am, you know, but I mean, I could also be 30 pounds lighter and I'm still considered obese.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you could have somebody, you know, like Rich Froning who weighs.
Oh, yeah.
Every single elite CrossFit athlete, even your average Joe is going to be, you know, morbidly obese on the BMI.
But I mean, but if you instill that in a kid and you start telling them at that age, well, this is how old you are and you're obese.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's kind of before you ever get started, you've already kind of lost the battle to get them to rein them in if you wanted to, you know, because everybody knows how high school and school is. You're obese.
Yeah.
But you don't look it. It's just that's
Are you obese in high school or are you the fat kid?
Yeah, you know. Did you wear husky pants or did you wear, you know, what kind of style of pants did your mom take you to go buy? How many knee patches did you have when you were So no, I just think that's I wanted to bring that up to you as a nutrition coach and get your take on it.
Yeah, we'll get back to some more nutrition in a bit. I want to talk a little bit more about your early CrossFit years. So, you said you started competing 2 months going into CrossFit. How many like competitions did you do before you actually got to Fittest of the Upstate?
Oh man.
I mean, was it quite a few?
It was quite a few. I mean, as soon as I did my first competition, which I very much had to be convinced into, I mean, after that, I was like, all right, like it's like talking about my first competition, I partnered with Grayson. She very much was what got me through the beginning of my CrossFit days, trying to get into it. But we did scaled team, got last place. But I remember like not even caring at the end of the day, like what place we got. I think I found out like 3 days later, like, oh, we placed last. Like,
right.
Okay.
When did you do Santa Series?
Santa Series, that was the year.
Was that the year?
2016, that was my first competition ever, and you have this horrible picture of me. Because I know that you know what I'm talking about, because I've seen it, and I'm not showing anybody.
We're going to have to find this in person.
I know exactly.
He knows where it's at.
I've already told him what I was going to do with it.
Yeah. But, so we placed, like, last place, and so I think at that point, I'm like, you can only go up from here. So I would sign up. I don't remember at what point I did my next one after that. I can't remember what my second one would have been. But I mean, prior to Fittest Upstate, I signed up for all kinds of stuff. Just partner. I've done like maybe one or two individuals prior to that, which is what I'd rather do. Once I got into individual competing, I'm like, there's no going back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people say that once they get into individual.
It's one of those things as far as photographers go too, is we always have athletes that are on our radar. That we notice, and I'll be honest with you, when you did it, you weren't even on the radar as far as to me at that time. And then
Fittest,
right?
Yeah.
And then because when I went back and looked at, like when I started doing the throwback Thursdays of everybody, is when I found that photo, And I was like, it's baby Madeline.
Yeah, for real. I looked very different then.
It's coming. It's going to be out there.
Yeah, I mean, I had never even heard of you until Fittest of the Upstate.
Yeah, I'm sure most people hadn't.
So
at that point, I hadn't done. I mean, in my head, I'm like, oh, I want to be competitive. But I think even now in my head, I'm still not like where I want to be. But as far as competitiveness, I'm like still warming up for what I believe I'm going to be at.
Yeah, well, you're still very young.
Yeah. So at that point, I was like, I wasn't considering myself going to place number 1 at all. But in my head, I'm like, oh, that's my goal. Like, that's what I'm going to do, even though I didn't actually think it was going to happen.
So what did you think when local comp announced they're going to hold this big competition of the fittest, individuals in the Upstate, and you can qualify through the Open? Did you know right then that you wanted to qualify, or were you just doing the Open to do the Open?
Yeah, no, I was just doing the Open to do the Open. I thought it was cool. I think it was super cool. Even now, I mean, I think it's an awesome thing that they put on, especially to get the community together, because they've done a fantastic job of doing that and getting the community attached with each other, the gyms, all kind of stuff. But I think even in my head now, I try not to overthink it and put that too high on a pedestal for me, because I don't want that to be the thing that makes me happy or not happy. So at the time, that was still the kind of thing where I'm doing the Open, I want to do the best that I could, but at the time, like, I thought that I would make it. I've assumed that I was going to be within the top, like, whatever 30 or 20 or whatever number they would make. So I wasn't as worried about it. And honestly, when I came in 3rd or 4th or whatever place I came in the Open that year, as far as the Upstate goes, I was pretty excited about that. I didn't think that would happen.
You really just want to get in.
Yeah.
And then, because if you peak before then you won't.
Yeah.
That's the whole training mindset of it. And
I think that was the year that I think I got my first ring muscle up, maybe.
Really?
Like, yeah, in the Open, that might have been it. It had to be that, yeah. I'm not gymnasty at all. Like,
but how many ring muscle ups did you have to do at the final?
So, funny thing about that, I had been stressed out about the final event because they'd announced it. We knew what it was going to be. In my head, I'm like, I'm going to make finals. And not 100% sure, but I'm telling myself that at least. And so I'm practicing this workout. And I'd messaged them multiple times to be like, hey, I hate this. Like, I hate this workout. The squat snatches are fine, but I hate that there's ring muscle ups because they were horrible at the time. But then during the day of the competition, I'd done the math after all the events going into finals, and I knew that whatever place that I placed in finals workout, I would still get number 1. So I had zero stress going into that workout, knowing that I hated ring muscle ups, because I knew that even if I placed dead last in the finals workout, I would still win.
Wow, I didn't know you were that far ahead.
I didn't really either until I was sitting there doing the math, so I wouldn't be as stressed out about it. And then when I realized that, I did it like 4 more times. And then I'm like, I feel so relieved, because that was not going to go well. Besides
you and Amy, who else was in the final heat for the championship?
I'll be honest, I barely remember. But I've seen pictures, so I know, like, Hannah was definitely in there because she placed 3rd, I believe, that year. I'm going to be honest, I have no clue. I don't think I even tried to look into that because I didn't want to get in my head.
Right.
So I think I just tried to block that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, it really was to see you there, knowing that you were doing it. It was, because I was. You should have told me, though. You should have said, I'll be fine, because I kept yelling at you. Come on, go.
I know, you were right there. And I just remember looking at Colin, my coach, and being like, these are horrible. But I wasn't, like, I felt very just casual about it, because I didn't have to stress out about it. But at the same time, who doesn't want to be good at ring muscle ups?
Right.
Well, I mean, that's like Matt Frazier or somebody like that going into it being like, hey, I'm already won. I got to do it. You can't just stand there.
See, he just compared you to Matt Frazier. It's pretty cool.
Wow, thank you.
I know.
Tia Toomey.
Same way. Female.
So really, once you won Fittest, I think you kind of, came onto the scene. Like, everybody knew who you were at that point. Did you start getting a lot more, like, social media following after Fittest?
Yeah, like, literally that night, I got a ton of people started to follow me, and I'm like, this is so cool. And so I rode the high for probably a week. I went in to the gym that Monday, like, at 5 a.m. I remember being fired up. I'm like, let's go. 5 a.m. after that competition, like, ready to work out, even though that was actually the only time I could work out that day. But I was like, I'm ready. I've got my coffee. Let's go.
Sure.
So this is a good topic then to bring up. So from a COVID standpoint, how has that changed knowing that we didn't have Fittest last year, we're going to have it this year, obviously. But how has that thrown off? Or has it? What has it done to your training wise and everything?
So great question. Initially, I think everyone was a little thrown off. Like, what do we do? I had when I moved into the house that I'm in now, we have a shed in our backyard, and prior to that, it just was full of storage stuff. And in my head, I'd always wanted to build a garage gym. Mm-hmm. I'd planned this like years in the past, and so when my Foothills gym shut down, I bought a bunch of equipment because we were selling it really cheap. And then over the years, I've just kind of like casually got stuff and just kind of shoved it in a corner. So as soon as everything shut down, I'm like, this is it. I get to build my gym. And so within 1 week, this is the fastest I've ever done a project. We like organized everything, painted the walls, got matting, put floors down. We already had all the equipment, so we just put it in there. Even like a week before everything shut down, we had no idea this was going to happen. Someone walked into CrossFit Clemson, where my boyfriend Charlie coaches, and was like, hey, I've got this rig, this wall mount rig, and I'm trying to get rid of it if you want to buy it super cheap. And Charlie's like, yeah. So we bought this rig from him like a week before everything shut down. And then when everything shut down, we put it up, and I'm like, this is fantastic. So we had a gym that I was able to train out of the whole time. And I remember being very focused for Fittest of the Upstate that year, or last year, as far as training, because we had no way to do muscle ups, which was in one of the workouts that I knew I would struggle with. And so we built a rig outside so that I could do muscle ups on a bar. And so I remember doing that and just every variation I could to make sure that I wouldn't suck at that.
It's amazing.
I feel like, so the first chipper at Crash, there was a lot of ring muscle ups.
There was. I was very worried about that workout.
I feel like you did pretty good, right?
I was shocked that I think I came in like 5th or something like that. The placement that I was not thinking I would get into. But I mean, apparently everyone else also struggled with the things that I struggled with. But I think that my running, because it had Air Runner in it, and when we switched locations and opened up a new facility, TLK training, as part of our kind of like co-gyms, I don't know what you would call that, but they have Air Runners there. And so I'd never used an Air Runner until we started that gym in July. And so as soon as they announced that workout for Crash, I was on that thing like every day, trying to get used to it, knowing that I loved to run in the past, so now it's just, okay, let me figure out how to get good at it on this machine. But I really went into that workout thinking that it wasn't going to go very well.
It's awesome. It seems like you're a very methodical person. You know, you know your weaknesses and you attack them head on, which I think we see with a lot of the best athletes. They're always like, all right, what can I do better? Yeah. And, you know, a lot of us, myself included, when I train, especially by myself, I love to do what I'm good at, right?
Oh, yeah, don't we all?
It's so hard to get behind something that you suck at and really attack it. So I think so far in this conversation, what I've found is that's something that you love to do.
Yeah. If it got to the point, like prior to Fittest Upstate, probably a year before that maybe, that whenever I would go to the gym and not know what I wanted to work on, I had a list written out of the things that I sucked at. And so I would just pick something off that list, and that's what I was doing that day. So like butterfly chest to bar, I would do those all the time because I was horrible at them. And I hated doing them. Like at the time, I really hated doing them, but that was my goal, was to just pick something I'm horrible at, and I was going to do that.
So what was your final ranking? Where did you find your final placement in Crash?
I think 7th.
Okay.
6th or 7th.
Let's talk about that event, because that was
pretty stout.
A very stout competition.
Yeah, there was some
very higher echelon, athletes there. So talk about your feelings going into that event and what you were feeling while you were going through that event.
So going into that competition, they put out kind of like the roster of who's going to be there, or like the post on Instagram, I think. And so there's a lot of very good girls, and I didn't want to overthink it, so I wouldn't like stalk their Instagram, but I'd at least go to see who they were. And there had been multiple competitions in the past that I would pull up the roster like the night before the competition or something, like Independence Games in Florence was one of them. They'd merged, and I didn't know this till the night before, they'd merged the RX and Elite division because of some issue that they had. And I was RX, and so they merged all of us. So I'm in this competition with these elite girls, and I'm looking at the roster, and I started to have like this panic attack. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, like these people are going to be amazing. And so I'd already had a couple incidents in the past where I look at the roster of girls, and I'm like overwhelmed. So going into this one, I'm thinking like, okay, whatever. I've done this in the past. Like I've competed against very good athletes. We'll just do it again. So I tried not to overwhelm myself with who was going to be there and just appreciate the fact that I was one of those who were there.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
As the weekend went on, I was very proud of how I did, because when they announced all the workouts, there were things that I just didn't feel comfortable with, like the double kettlebell squats.
Mm-hmm.
I remember doing like one and then like falling over because they were so heavy. And so going into that workout, I was like in first place the majority of the time until my legs eventually gave out on me. But I just felt very good about the fact that I trained these things for a really long time, very hard,
Mm-hmm.
and that all showed to pay off, even though I didn't place like first or anything. As far as my abilities at the competition and like a month prior to that, way different.
Yeah. Hey guys, we'll get back to the episode in a moment here, but we want to take a quick break to thank our sponsor for this episode, CrossFit Greer. If y'all live in the Greer area and are looking to join a CrossFit box, go ahead and look up Jen and Reagan Green, owners of CrossFit Greer. Mention the Apogee Podcast to them, and they will give 10% off your first month's membership.
We also want to thank Blitz Belts for their continued sponsorship of the podcast. They're offering our listeners a 15% discount at checkout. All you have to do is type in Apogee, all caps. That's APOGEE for your 15% off discount. What would you say your biggest hole is in your fitness profile?
Like gymnastics? Is that the question?
Yeah.
As far as CrossFit goes?
Yeah, but I just don't see that.
Really?
I don't.
I think a comfort level in workouts,
Mm-hmm.
it really does depend on the gymnastics. There's some that I very much enjoy, and there's some like strict handstand push-ups that I feel like I would consider myself pretty decent at now, but I was not good at them at all before, a couple years ago, or a year or so ago. That, and then I think lately I've learned that my strength is a big issue as far as like cycling heavy stuff in a workout.
Okay.
Like I feel like I'm pretty strong when it comes to like let's max out a lift or something like that.
Sure.
But when it comes to sitting there and cycling a barbell that's very heavy in a workout, I've come to figure out that is also an issue.
What is your max back squat?
295. Just
I
shy
saw
of 300.
that. I saw that on Instagram. I was scrolling through your Instagram before we
Yeah.
had this interview today, and I was like, "Wow!" I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty. How much do you weigh?
130 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's that's pretty
It's
amazing.
almost-
That's a lot more than a lot of
Yeah.
average guys can do.
Well, and I mean, I think it has a lot to do with how I'm built and just my past. I've always been pretty good at squats.
Right.
And so like the brute strength things, I feel like I'm pretty good at. Whereas like snatching, the very technical stuff, I'm like, nah.
Where are you at on your clean and jerk?
It's been a while since I've maxed that out. Maybe 215. I think that's where I'm at. Although I've had a back injury for a while recently.
Yeah.
So I've been out of training for at least 6 weeks now, and I'm just now finally getting back into it. So as far as what I'm doing right now,
I'm not asking you
very
current. I'm
different.
just asking
I
you.
know. But yeah, my past, yeah.
Okay, and your snatch?
Snatch, that's also been a very long time since I've maxed out. But I think it was 150 or 155, somewhere in that range.
That's good.
That's about right.
That one, I keep getting this, I've gotten in this mental block where I'll go to like try and max out that lift and I like blank. I don't know how to do it anymore all of a sudden.
Well, it's the most
mental
technical
block.
lift there is.
Yeah.
It is very technical.
So it's my favorite lift.
I love doing it. I just
no
don't do it
way.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just it's one of those things where it's one movement at all, and that's
Yeah.
why it's so technical.
It's so
not
fluid and
Yeah, there's no like when you have the catch and then the
yeah.
clean.
And there's no better feeling than catching a snatch
That's what I was
right.
gonna say.
Perfect.
When you hit that
good.
snatch, it's one of the best feelings.
Oh, yeah.
When you can just stand that thing up.
And you know you got it.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I love
It's
it.
a good feeling.
Now, what's your overhead squat at though?
190,
Oh, so you're
195.
there. You gotta work on that pull, girl.
It's not where I wanted to be.
So you've got an overhead squat of 190, but you
Yeah.
have a snatch at 150.
150, something like that.
Okay.
I'm telling you, it's a mental block.
Yeah.
I can pull the bar and I can hold it overhead. There's something about the in between part that
Yeah.
I'm like, I blank.
What's your deadlift at?
330. I want to say it's 330. It's been a bit since I've done that as well.
You need to talk to Colin. Colin knows how to teach.
I talk to him every day. I talked to him recently about getting back into strength training specifically after coming back from an injury. Because in my head, I'm like, oh, well, I want to see where I'm at right now. So let's go max everything out. That's a horrible idea.
It is.
So I need someone to kind of like hold the reins on me. And so I've given him the job of make sure I don't do something stupid.
So I want to talk a little bit more about your training. Okay. So obviously you do a lot of CrossFit, right?
Yeah.
But we all know that if you're just doing CrossFit, you're missing a lot. So what else are you doing in your training outside of CrossFit as far as strength training?
Strength training, I do a ton of accessory stuff. So if I ever do doubles in a day, which I used to be very different than this, but right now, if I ever do double workouts, the second one is usually a complete accessory. Maybe like a little bit of cardio, like a single cardio machine, and then a ton of accessory stuff. Partially just from injuries. I've had multiple injuries in the past that have really either put me out or just been aggravating, and I haven't been able to train the way I want to. And then working at the chiropractic office that I work at now, I've learned a ton. And so I've just really figured out the importance of that and how much that affects me as an athlete.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that. I think that's one thing that I always try to stress to people. You know, I mentioned this on a post I did earlier this week, that just talking specifically about CrossFit from a physical therapy standpoint, that, you know, I think CrossFit is one of the best workout regimens that any person, any average Joe off the street can really get involved with and see a huge difference, right?
Well, science is weighing it out currently. There's been articles here recently saying that any level of exercise that you do is obviously going to be health beneficial, no matter the intensity. There's an article that just came out that mentioned that. So
right, yeah, absolutely. But I think if you look at the average person from where they start to where they are a year after doing CrossFit, I don't think that if they were in a Globo gym for a year, they'd be at the same level of fitness that they are after a year of CrossFit.
I completely
and
agree.
we've seen that. I mean, y'all both know Stephen Christofides. He came from very much like a bro gym, and he came into CrossFit because we started Electric City at the same time because we both thought that the other person had been there longer. So we're like asking them questions, and we're like, I don't know. And so he came in with like a super tight chest. I remember because he would do like bench press all the time or something like that. And so like his snatch and overhead squat were horrible. And I'll tell him that they were terrible. But now after doing CrossFit, even after just 1 year of CrossFit, I would go up to him and be like, hey, that looks really good.
Yeah, that guy's got an engine too.
Yeah, he does.
He has got an engine. But what I was going to say was, working on the accessories is so important for injury prevention, right? So doing the little things outside of the CrossFit class, doing the crossover symmetry, I think that's one of the best things that CrossFit has started to promote, because, I mean, that's basically straight out of a physical therapy clinic or a chiropractic clinic. Like, that's stuff that we teach every single day.
And I really think that's something that's lacking in, from what I see as far as the Upstate goes, because of course I'm not saying the rest of the state, but we post a lot about the Upstate on social media. So what I see is a lot of people wanting to go really, really hard all the time, and that's because that's what looks good, and that's what everyone wants to see, is you just maxing out all the time. So I see a lot of these athletes going really, really hard, and in my head I'm thinking, I get that they're posting their best. Nobody wants to post their worst. But at the same time, I'm like, how are y'all going so hard and not getting injured? And I feel like I'm over here and I like pick something up wrong, and I'm like, oh.
I think being somebody who I like weightlifting. I love weightlifting a lot. I think the mentality that we have as far as Americans go is, you know, it is I'm a bro out. It's going to be a bro session. You know, we've all felt on that. Whereas, you know, China, Russia, you know, the Eastern Bloc countries, they would get them as a kid. Yeah. You know, and here's what you're going to do for the next years. You're going to just do 35 pounds. Yeah. And you're going to groove that until you become sync with it. I think a lot of people, and I've said this before, I wish we didn't have RX weight sometimes. Yeah. I wish we wouldn't have that in the workout, because I think a lot of people get hurt sometimes doing that. I think also too, it's a pride thing for some people. I would much rather see you be proficient and move the weight better and complete the task than for you to go over there, lift a weight that's too much for you, or you haven't had enough time under tension and hurt yourself.
Yeah, at 100%. And I've seen gyms that have specifically given out, like, here's the workout, here's 2 different ways you can scale it, kind of like levels. And I think that's a great idea because it gives people an option as far as, well, that's the workout, but if they see me doing this, then they're going to think this. But it's like, no, if you do ring rows, it's written on the board to do ring rows or something like that, where you don't have to feel shame about scaling something.
And I have that blocked in my head to this day.
Yeah.
Because, we live with our ghost in our head. There's a ghost that lives in everybody's head.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was your best day.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so you always remember that, and you always try your best to get back to it. Exactly.
Yeah. And
if we could get over that, and that's hard to let go.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing I really love about coaching, is because once I get that connection with the people in our classes, I can tell them, like, hey, you should not be doing this because it's not good for you, and they'll trust me on that. And so I love having that relationship with people to where they're going to trust me to be like, hey, if I say you should do ring rows because your elbow's hurting or your shoulders, like, they'll trust me to do that. And so as a coach, I try and enforce that as much as I can for the people that need that.
Yeah,
because they just need someone to tell them. And some coach, I don't want to be the coach that's like, oh, I want everyone to push to be harder and better, and I want them to be able to do handstand push-ups. But in my head, I'm like, if they don't want to get upside down, they don't ever have to get upside down. They could do scales all day long and never even, if that's not a desire,
I just think it's amazing. You were talking about being there for like a year and then finally being able to do things, and you were talking about it. We don't do a lot of bench pressing in CrossFit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we just started doing it in like the past year and a half. And I remember the first time we decided to do it at the gym. And I can't remember what I bench pressed in high school. I can't, because that was the mark for every guy. But I did 190 pounds. And I would never felt more proud as a 40-year-old man at that time. Like, hey, I can bench 190 pounds at 400. I mean, at 400.
400 what?
That would be amazing. But I mean, you're right. When it comes, the accessory work is the ugly work that nobody wants to see. The ring rows, because you're building the stability in the shoulder.
Yeah.
If you can't, it's you got to work on your grip strength and that kind of stuff.
I think there's so much stuff on social media right now about accessory work that's just over the top. I think you can almost get overwhelmed with some of these videos you're seeing of,
you gotta keep it simple.
Exactly. Like some of these videos, you don't need to do all that. You can do some of these simple things that people that have been through the test of time that's still going to help prevent some injuries than doing some of these crazy things that people come up with,
Yeah.
Well, to CrossFit's credit, they've come out with there's a version of the Open that's all bodyweight, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
To their credit, I think that's amazing. They've also come out with the list of equipment you need if you need to do the Open at home.
So. And I like that. I mean, like you said, they have that level as far as you have scaled and then you have foundational. And I think that foundational is great for people that are just starting CrossFit and it's like they want to participate, but they still can't even do some of the basic things. That way they still have an option to participate and they don't feel like they have to go and kill themselves.
I agree.
Who doesn't go into the Open thinking, I just want to go all out on this workout because we put so much emphasis on this one workout. And
right.
So that way it gives you kind of some levels to pick from.
No, I'm excited for this year. I'm excited for the direction that CrossFit is going.
It's a 3-day Open, not a 5-week Open.
Yeah, right.
3-week
Open.
With possible multiple workouts in a week.
Yeah.
But
you think so?
That's what they said. It could be more than one workout in a week. Yeah.
Oh, man. I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Woo.
There you go.
Man.
Yeah, so work on that recovery. Speaking of recovery, working in a chiropractic office, obviously you take advantage of a lot of recovery that goes into that. So what kind of stuff do you do to recover from day to day?
From day to day, I mean, like we were talking about, keeping it simple. I do a ton of stretching. I've started using the GoWatt app actually, and that has it's just gotten me to stretch so much more now. And with my back being injured, I've spent a ton of time stretching, and so and this was even a routine when I was doing Wadapalooza and training for that, because that was probably the hardest I've ever trained for something, and I had some shoulder impingement going on at the time, and so every single night before bed, probably for up to an hour maybe, I would just stretch. So now it's just part of my nightly routine is before I go to bed, I will just stretch. And so stretching is a great thing. I'll obviously make sure that my nutrition's where it needs to be. So just making sure that I'm eating enough, because especially if I have injuries or if I'm overly fatigued from a workout or know that I have a hard day the next day. I just have to make sure that I'm eating enough. I definitely probably don't sleep enough. That's the one that could definitely use some work.
Sure.
Just because I'm up pretty early most days, and then I try to get to bed early at night, and I feel like I do a decent job at it compared to what I used to do. But I think that's a big factor that I could work on. But then in talking about my chiropractic office too, I mean, being in there multiple times a week, I'm able to get either ask questions about things, because a lot of it obviously I can do on my own at home, but just having that guideline as far as, hey, here's what you probably shouldn't do. And then I'll get regular adjustments. I'm a big fan of regular adjustments.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you doing exactly at the chiropractic?
So I'm their exercise specialist. So this chiropractic office is a little different from the majority where you go in and it's like pop, pop, and you're out.
Right.
So this one you go in and they spend time with the chiropractor, and then he brings them out to me, and we'll go through some basic exercises that they can do at home to help actually solve the problem, because the adjustments are great. We'll do soft tissue work, but that stuff helps at the time, but it's not necessarily going to last you until you come back. So it's the exercises, the accessory work that actually fixes the issue. So I'll give them those things. I'll teach them how to do that.
You're speaking my language.
Yes.
I need to meet this man.
Yeah.
That's what we preach all day, every day here. We can do the soft tissue work. We can do the adjustments. We can do the mobilizations, but until we lock that in with our actual muscles that are attached to our joints, you're going to be right back in here.
And it
with
really
the same
comes
issue.
down for everything health related, but specifically this, just habit. So if people don't make these things habits at home, just even posture, your posture can screw up everything, especially if you're an athlete and you don't have good posture. So it's the little habits that you have throughout the week that actually are creating problems. Not the problems don't just come up on their own.
Right. I always say it's not because you're 50 and you lifted the bag of groceries wrong. That you might have lifted the bag of groceries wrong, but that's just the straw that broke the camel's back. There's been a lot leading up to this, to the point where you got to that, where a 5-pound grocery bag threw your back out.
Or like you bent over to pick up the pencil and
Right.
Suddenly you've tweaked something. Like, that shouldn't tweak something.
You reached back to grab your purse out of your back seat and you tore your rotator cuff. I mean, that happens, but it doesn't happen just because
out
of
of
a
nowhere.
purse. There are a lot of things, build up to that point. So I think that's awesome. I think what you said about building habits, that's one of the biggest things I try to preach to people. It's the little 1% that you do every day that add up to the 100%, or at least the 90%, right? I mean, we're not ever going to be functioning at 100% all the time.
Yeah.
But if we're at that 80 to 90% the majority of the time, that's where we want to be. And I think a lot of people have this idea where we should be pain-free at all time. If you're active, you're going to have some aches and pains. Like, that just comes with the territory.
And speaking of that, one of the greatest things that my chiropractor has told me, and he probably doesn't realize this, but when we did x-rays and found a fracture in my back, I'm sitting here stressed out about the fact that I preach like longevity. I don't necessarily train athletes. I train the average person because I want the average person to be a healthy individual.
Right.
So that's what I preach. And so in my head, I'm thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't even be doing what I'm doing because it's hurting myself. And he told me that no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm just casually active, if I'm super active, if I'm a lazy person that sits on the couch, like, you're going to have an injury. You're going to have some kind of issue just based off of, like, we're humans and that's going to happen at some point. And so that was really helpful for me in my head, as far as I know that I'm a very active individual. And yes, that can hurt my health to an extent, but there's also, regardless of what I do, something like that's probably going to hurt my health, whether it's being overactive, underactive. There's a lot of things that...
Any kind of repetitive motion will change the physiology of your body.
Yeah.
I mean, even in England, when they dig up these battlefields from medieval times, they can tell if they were an archer or not, and they could tell if they were left-handed or right-handed.
Yeah.
Just by their shoulder joint.
Oh, very cool.
They can see the process, whatever, it's some kind of process, but they can see, this bone has been worn down, and this is what we see all the time.
Yeah.
Or they can look at their compression on their vertebrae and be like, this person carried a lot of bricks around.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's you're right. If you want to sit there and on a couch all day, then you're gonna cause yourself to have bad posture.
Yep.
And it's gonna show up on your spinal process.
Yeah, I think I pretty much say this, I feel like every podcast, but I do always want to hammer this home. You know, if you are getting aches and pains by working out, don't let that get you down, right? Like, it's so much better to get those aches and pains or that shoulder issue that's bothering you for a month or two than to just quit and sit on the couch and develop internal medicine issues. Like, I'd much rather have a shoulder issue to work with than have diabetes to work with or a heart disease issue.
I think that's where a lot of people, I completely agree with that, but I think also a lot of people need to realize that, like, pain is a sign of something. So if you've got some pain, you need to lay off of a movement for a little bit, or like pay attention to it. Because I think what I see a lot in our gym, and this is why I've been doing a lot of adding in some mobility seminars to our gym, just because I know that a lot of people need them right now. People will have shoulder issues and they're like, well, it hurts when I do this, and then we'll show up the next day for a workout and they're doing that movement,
right?
And I'm like, your shoulder is telling you no,
right? You need to take a break from it. You need to learn how to adjust that biomechanic so that when you are moving that weight or doing that gymnastics movement, you're doing it more appropriately. And that goes right back to accessory muscles, right? Because those accessory muscles and training those accessory muscles, it's what's going to stabilize that area. So we could talk for hours about this.
We could keep going
we
forever.
Really could. But no, I think that's great what you're doing over there at that chiropractic's office.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic.
I've learned a lot, and it's made me a way better coach just because of it.
So I was going to ask you that. Being one of the elite female athletes in the Upstate, and you're coaching, you know, just normal people who just want to get in shape, is it hard sometimes for some of those folks to recognize that you are at a certain level and they don't have to be at that level when they're training with you? Or do you not really run into that too much?
Yeah, I don't think I really run into that. I think I don't like coaching people either in nutrition or personal training, especially. That never really comes up as far as a topic of as far as what I do. Most of them know what I do, but that never really comes up. And I think they have a lot of respect for me because they've trusted what I've taught them and they've seen progress. And really, it comes down to, I mean, I could be a great athlete and a horrible coach. So what I do as an athlete has no correlation to me as a coach. I have to be a good coach in order for people to realize that I'm a good coach. So I kind of separate those two and don't even really touch that subject when it comes to one-on-one stuff, just because I don't think that has anything to do with my coaching abilities.
Great. I love that answer. So let's talk a little bit about your future plans. Like, you're still very young, 23, so you still got a lot of life left as far as where you could go with CrossFit. Is that something that you want to do? Do you want to like try to really take it to the next level and do some real sanctioned events where you're at, you know, female elite, or what's your goals? Yeah, no, that's absolutely my goal. I even remember starting CrossFit that my goal was to make regionals. I think for some reason when I found out that Allison had been to regionals in the past, in my head I'm like, oh, it's possible. Like, she lives in Anderson. She does kind of what I do. Like, she's made it to regionals, so why can't I make it to regionals? And eventually they took regionals away, and that was honestly a big bummer for me because at that point I'm like, well, I don't really know what my goals are right now. And so they brought out sanctionals. I kind of tried to figure those out and honestly never really figured out. I always missed qualifiers, and I'm like, when did that even happen? So I never really could figure out sanctionals. So now that they're bringing back almost a regionals level type thing, that's absolutely a goal of mine. And really my goal in CrossFit is just to get as far as I can as an individual, just to do whatever I can do my best at as long as my body allows me to, because I am very young, and so I'm still in my head thinking that I'm just at the beginning of this. So I haven't even touched what my potential is. And that's at least what I tell myself. I think it's very interesting that you didn't play sports growing up. It's like you can almost take it two different ways. If you play sports growing up, there's so much in sports that you learn: spatial awareness, body awareness, movement, team playing. Not that this is a team, but how to train, how to learn from a coach. Yeah. I mean, that's a big thing, right? But going into this, you're like extremely green. Yeah. So
you're the only CrossFitter outside of a games athlete that I've ever talked to that didn't have a college background or any type of sports background.
Yeah.
We talked to Gerald Sasser one time, and he was a video game player.
Yeah.
He never did any kind of sports in college, never did sports in high school.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, but to say what you're saying about spatial awareness, you said you did band, correct?
Well, I was just going to say, I'm going to sound like a huge nerd for a minute, and I knew this was going to come out eventually, but yeah, I did marching band for 5 years, and the competitiveness was absolutely still there. So the competitiveness has been an ongoing thing regardless of what I do. It doesn't have to just be sports.
What instrument did you play?
I played the French horn.
Okay.
I marched the mellophone, and
So did Aaron.
So I was not very good friends with the people in my section because I had to be better than them.
Do you still find yourself watching band videos on YouTube?
Yeah, I listen to stuff a lot. Some of the mostly French horn stuff because that's what I played, and I do miss playing that a lot of the time. But there were times where I would be very competitive towards the people at my school and my set, like the people that I should be close to, and we just had to be better than each other. So the competition aspect was still there, but even just marching band alone, you end up learning a lot of spatial awareness, a lot of
timing.
There is strength in that as far as holding something up for 15 minutes at a time in the exact same position.
Sure.
Yeah.
Breathing. We still did exercises, and that was kind of where I started getting to the point where I'm going to start running more. I'm going to start being healthier. So I did at some point start to transition into like, oh, I want to do a half marathon. So I started training for that along with this. And so that was kind of the transition point. But we learned a lot about like group, like working as a group, having a leader, listening, following directions. And I think I'm someone that takes, I do really well with instruction. So if someone comes up to me and says, hey, this is what you need to do, I'm like, all right, let's do it. But if you don't give me instruction, I'm like, I don't know what to do. So when people just say, hey, here's what you need to do, I'll just, I'm good with it.
Yeah, I'm never going to discount band as not a sport anymore. Because after watching and hearing, obviously you've said what you said, and Aaron said the same thing. I mean, if you watch a lot of that stuff, it's they're trying to cross their T's, literally cross their T's and dot their I's at the right time. You know, and they're doing it in front of everybody.
And if you look into the high level marching bands, I mean, they're very athletic as far as
choreographed,
what they have to do, the kind of training they go through. My brother did some of that at a very high level, and he went through some like in-depth training where it's like a boot camp style stuff. And I won't say that high school is like that, because high school band, you've got still very lazy people who are not healthy at all. But then you've got people that take stuff away from it.
So they're doing training at band camp.
I honestly think one of the things that is looked over in CrossFit is just the simple plank. Doing planks. Gosh, I can't remember the last time I ever done one. But that in and of itself is huge, because that's core training. That's, you learn to be very aware of where you're falling. Yeah. You know, whether you're, because you got a weak back, you got a strong back.
Well, and speaking of that, now that I've obviously been dealing with some back stuff going on, I have done more dead bugs in my life than I ever thought I would do. And I don't ever think that I will always start a training session with some dead bugs. Like, I'll never not start with that, because I've learned doing them for starters, how sore I get after that, because they make me very sore now. But just how much it applies to all of my lifting and how much it's improved my core strength. And like we were talking about the back squat earlier, the day that I went in and got a 295-pound back squat, it was right after Squattober, but I hadn't been squatting. And I actually had just had COVID, and this was like my first 2 days back from having COVID. And so I hadn't been squatting for a while, but I'd been focusing on a ton of core strength. Like, that's all I'd done, because my back had still been an issue at that point. And I went into the gym thinking, like, I wanted to max out anyways, because it was the end of Squattober, just to see where I was at, and had no expectations to even hit my current max, and got like a 10-pound PR. And I attribute all of that to just working on my core.
That's the biggest thing. I think that's one of the reasons why Rich Froning was just a head above everybody else in his heyday, because that is one of the biggest things, and he admittedly repeatedly says that he focused on in his training, GHD upon GHD upon GHD upon GHD.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned this, because Allison actually, she's very quick with GHDs. Oh my goodness. And we've asked her, like, how are you so fast at these? And she's just done so many of them. And she had it written on her whiteboard one time when we were using whiteboards to like write everything we were gonna do that day, like 100 GHDs for time. And I saw that. So while she was coaching a class, like after we'd done all our stuff, I went in the back and I was like, I'm gonna do 100 GHDs for time. And I ended up getting an ocular migraine afterwards because I had all of that movement like up and down, and then I didn't eat anything. I went straight from there straight to class. But yeah, the GHDs, it sounds like it's a common core thing that really helps.
And I'm not just saying just GHD. I just know that's something that he did a lot in his training, and probably still does. But I know that in his training he focused a lot on core stability.
Absolutely.
It was one of the biggest priorities, and I just think. Because back then, people weren't snatching or doing 300-plus pound clean and jerks like he was, back in 2012, 2013.
Oh, yeah.
Now a lot of
I just think it's amazing with Rich running, but everybody else, I think it's amazing just what the human body is capable of doing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Because, ring muscle ups, that's an Olympic event.
Yeah.
And here you are, just anybody.
Yeah.
Can do them if they put the time and effort into
absolutely.
it. So it's just, it's time under tension, and it's really if you want to do it or not.
Yeah.
So. I think the cool thing about CrossFit is, we have our athletes, we have our specialized athletes, basketball, football, softball, soccer, baseball, right? And you're training for those sports. And I think once you get past, high school, okay, I'm not good enough to play that sport. You just kind of lose fitness traditionally, right? Like you don't really do anything, right?
Yeah.
Like our parents didn't really.
Well, there was nothing to do.
Right.
There was no.
Like growing up, my dad might have gone to the gym and did bench press and arm curls or something. We might have gone to the YMCA, but now like you realize you're still human. You can still perform.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing, like you just said, to see what these people who 15, 20, 30 years ago.
Oh yeah.
People our age probably could never imagine themselves doing what we do.
Well, I think it's amazing what the older people are doing now.
Oh yeah.
You look at the Masters athletes.
Oh yeah. We have our oldest gym member is 80 years old. I think he's 80 years old, and he comes in, and every time we do double unders, he does single unders.
Yeah.
And I literally will watch him partially in amazement, but also partially because I'm like, please don't drip. And he'll sit there and he'll do 100 single unders, and I'm like, you are 80 years old.
It's amazing.
This is amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's we've got a guy at our gym, and he played college football, but he can legitimately bench press 400 to 500 pounds, and he's maybe 60.
Wow.
Well, and that's the thing I really love about CrossFit for just your average person, is because it gives you goals outside of just your everyday life. And so for me, specifically working with like nutrition clients that do CrossFit, it's like, okay, well, their goals are more so CrossFit related now than they are weight loss related. But if you work on both, like, it's gonna help with weight loss. So I think CrossFit's given people this kind of outlet as something to work on and build towards without.
Yeah, for sure. Because CrossFit's objective.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to get X amount of muscle ups in 2 months.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to run this mile in X amount of minutes in a month. Whereas like bodybuilding, so subjective, right?
Yeah,
it's all subjective.
Yeah.
So when you get objective goals, those things that were subjective just kind of fall into place because you're doing the right stuff, which I think is amazing. So, Madeline, outside of CrossFit, what are some goals that you have for your life?
So, outside my life or outside of CrossFit, I have a lot of goals as far as where I want to go as like a coach and with my own business, because I am very young. So that's very much at the forefront of my mind all the time is when I'm not competing as an athlete or training as an athlete, I am, okay, well, how can I build my own brand? And me and Charlie both have talked, in the future we want to eventually open our own gym, maybe move away somewhere, still probably local, probably back home to where I'm from, open a gym there and help people. So we just want to like build a community and help people with the thing that we know the most about, which is just fitness and health. And so that's always at the forefront of my mind as far as that's a goal out in the future that we're going to eventually get to. And it's kind of like, well, what can I do now to prepare for that and to better myself, my own knowledge, since I'm young enough to to be able to still do that. And
so what exactly is your business?
So I work with people on their nutrition, personal training, but primarily right now nutrition. I have a lot of nutrition clients that I'll work with mostly for just general health. I don't really work with a lot of athletes. I do have a couple, but I really just, my desire is to help people appreciate themselves more and to learn how to treat their bodies well, just every day through habit and lifestyle changes. So that's what I am creating. It's a process. But
and how long have you been doing that?
I started a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit more personal training, kind of easing into it prior to that. But a year ago, I was like, okay, I'm going to put out there that I'm starting this thing and it's going to happen. And I'm very thankful that I started a year ago, because when I compare last January to this January, it is a world of a difference.
Well, we did your branding photos.
I know. But yeah, check out my photos. Kevin Harrington photos.
I don't know if I missed this just now. Did you say what it's called?
So right now it's Optimal Training and Nutrition. I've actually been thinking about rebranding, but right now that's where I'm at on I'm building a social media for that. I've always been going back and forth between having a separate social media or just doing everything through my own. So that's kind of a work in progress. I have a website too, optimaltrainingandnutrition.com.
Sweet.
With all my stuff on there as far as information about my programs that I offer. I have a blog that is very much health and wellness related versus like me related. It's not really about me. It's just about wellness stuff that I want people to know about, that they might not know about. So yeah.
That's awesome. I did not know that.
Yeah. So
Optimal Training.
Optimal Training.
It's like Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, at the time I was like, if I want to have a brand, I got to pick a name. And so that was the first thing I came up with. And I'm like, a lot of this I've just been winging.
Sure.
I'm like, I'm just going to
that's the
pick
best way to
something
learn.
and run with it.
It really is.
Yeah. And the whole time I think I've had a lot of, there's a term for it. I cannot think of what it is. Where I don't feel like I'm right for what I'm doing.
Growing pains.
That's not the word.
That's not it?
That's not it. It's like a psychological term for it. I cannot think of what it is right now. But imposter syndrome. It's imposter syndrome. That's the word for it.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till, yeah. So that's basically what, in my head, I'm like, I'm just going to fake it till I make it. So I'm going to pick something and I'm going to be confident with it. And like, I know that I know what I'm doing. But it's like, I have to make sure that other people know that I know what I'm doing.
That's just getting them to believe you.
Dude, that's like me in golf. I always look the best when I go in golf, so I look like I know what I'm doing. Yeah. But I first tee off, everybody's like, all right, you can hold my beer.
That's why I gave up playing golf.
Is Charlie doing that with you, or is this just you for Optimal?
So he's absolutely part of it. If you check out the website, we've got both of us on there that you can learn more about us with. He does a lot more on the training side. So I'm kind of the nutrition focus. That's I just have a huge passion for nutrition and helping people with that. And he's always had a background in training and exercise, and he's gone through powerlifting, CrossFit. He currently coaches CrossFit, and that's how we met. So he's got that background for sure. So that's what he's been doing.
Yeah, it sounds like fitness brought you guys together. That's one of our questions. But it sounds like when it comes to fitness, you guys are very much one and the same. Yeah,
we are incredibly similar on that. That's how we met, was through coaching at a gym together. And he came and watched Fittest Upstate and was like, yep, that's the one. So
oh, really?
Yeah, he was that we had been friends before that, but we'd not really talked. And in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, he's the one. Like before this, I'm like, I know.
You think it just because you had the title, he was like, I need to go out there. That way I can always say that
after the very first workout, and I did win the very first workout, but he apparently had been taking pictures and videos the whole time, and I had no idea. And
he was stalking you.
Yeah, after the workout, he's like, hey, I got all these pictures for you, and I'm going to send them to you. And I'm like, you got pictures for me? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, I figured you'd want some pictures. And so the whole rest of the day, we're sitting here talking, and so that's what kind of was like.
They were all in his stone, weren't they?
But we both were like, yeah, that was the day we were like, yeah, that's the one.
That's awesome.
Cool.
So what do you guys like to do outside of CrossFit?
Yes. Well, we talked about our fur babies. We love hanging out with them and walking them, playing with them. As far as together, we honestly try not to over talk CrossFit at home because we're both so into it throughout our days, and that's all that we think about. So we have times where like we just don't want to talk about this, and then there's times like our mobility seminars where when we start talking about it and we've got ideas, we will go for like hours. We could just go on and on and on, which is something that I love that he and I can kind of geek out about, like exercise
that's cool.
stuff.
Yeah,
but we can also realize that we need a break from it.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. All right.
So about time to do the rapid fire questions. I think so.
Oh,
All right. I'm gonna take odds. You take evens.
All right. If
right.
David, you're gonna do it. You're, go ahead. I'm sorry.
All
Go ahead.
If Harrison gave you a prepaid black card and said Charlie is picking you up and y'all are heading to the airport, all expenses paid for a week vacation, and once you got to the airport you could pick anywhere to go, where would you go right now?
Oh man.
Without COVID.
Right. Oh, okay. I was actually gonna ask that.
No COVID right now. In a perfect world.
Can I give multiple answers?
One answer.
One answer. With Charlie, I'd probably go to. We really enjoyed going to Canada, so I do want to throw that out there that I would love to go back there. But honestly, I would want to go back to Iceland.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you had a dessert,
oh man,
if you could have
donuts.
any dessert with
donuts.
no. Okay, all right.
Anything specific?
No calorie restrictions.
Yeah, specifically a Krispy Kreme strawberry sprinkled donut. More a dozen of them actually. That would be my dessert of choice. Thank you.
Well there you go.
All right, coffee or energy drinks?
Oh, a coffee all day long. Don't drink energy drinks. They're a waste of your money. Buy coffee. It's good for the soul.
There you go. I'm right there with you.
All right, so when you have children at some point, if you plan to have them, if you had a magic wand and you could wave it and they would be good at anything. What would it be?
I'm going to go with the cheesy answer and just say good people. I don't really care what they're good at. I just want them to be good people to other people.
Sure.
That's
good.
Yeah.
That works for me.
Cheesy, but we're going with it.
I have kids and I say the same thing. It's like, I don't care what you're good at, but as long as you're a good person, a good human, that's what I hope to raise for sure. All right. What would your ideal CrossFit workout look like? Doesn't have to be a staple or
Murph.
A Murph?
Yes.
Okay.
Running and body weight and a long workout is my favorite one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What would your ideal rest day look like?
So my ideal rest day used to be going for a long run, and then someone told me that was not a rest day. So now my ideal rest day looks like sleeping in, having a really chill day. Honestly, just like getting stuff done. Like I thrive in like accomplishing things, like cleaning my house or meal prepping. So like I really do enjoy that. Yeah.
Good.
Sounds super prepping.
Meal prepping.
Yeah.
Every Sunday.
All right. What song are you listening to when you're ripping out a 5-minute AMRAP?
Oh my gosh. Don't ask me about music. And you can ask my classes, and they hate the music that I play because I just don't know what to play. So I don't
You just turn the radio on.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Yep.
All right. How do we get abs like Charlie?
Like Charlie. This is, in his words, buffalo chicken wings every night and potato skins. And he also, he drinks a lot of chocolate milk, protein chocolate milk. But I don't know. I think he's just trained so much his entire life that like they're there and they're just probably never going to go away. Yeah.
Hopefully for you, right?
Yeah. But we really do have to make sure he eats enough because it's hard for him to get enough calories in.
Wow.
He's a big dude.
Yeah.
How tall is he?
I think 6 foot.
Wow.
6 foot, 6'1".
How much does he weigh?
I don't know if he'll.
Charlie, we just got to get you
Sorry,
on here,
Charlie.
buddy.
We do too.
207 pounds the last time I checked.
Wow.
I think he has gone up a little bit from there. We've been feeding them, so he's been getting in some food.
All right. Which games CrossFit athlete would you like to work out with and get coffee with afterwards? So not only work out, but then hang out with coffee afterwards. Outside of the Upstate.
And it can't be Allison. You've already done that.
Yeah, it can't be Allison or
like
Josh
CrossFit athlete in general, CrossFit Games athlete.
Yeah, Games athlete.
Games athlete. I think I have 2 answers for this. One would be Tia Claire Toomey, not because she's just the top, but there's other athletes that I've really liked in the past, and then the more I've either met them in person or have just seen their Instagram stuff. I'm not as big of a fan as I used to be, and every time I've seen something of her, she's just a very genuine, like, she just really does seem like a good person. But the other person would be Haley Adams, just because she's also very young, and I'm amazed at what she does at such a young age.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Madeline, where can people find you on the social medias and stuff and get in contact with you?
You can find me on Facebook, Madeline Helms, although I don't use it much, so don't find me there. And you can find me on Instagram at Madeline M. Helms, or my newly created page, Optimal Training and Nutrition. I think that's all I've got.
Cool. Let's bump up that Optimal Nutrition following.
Optimal Nutrition.
Yeah.
Let's
check out my website. It's up.
Sweet. So, awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else you would like to leave us with, good sir?
Guess the one thing I want to say before we cut out with Madeline is loved having you on.
Yes.
Thank you.
This has been a great episode. We're really excited to watch you throughout the next several years. Just continue to grow. Not only grow yourself, but grow in your relationship with Charlie, and then also with the community in here in the Upstate as far as CrossFit
We'd love to have you back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we need to get down to Electric City, or I know you've been there plenty of times.
Yeah.
I've never been
to
do a workout.
Come on down.
We will. I will for sure. We did have a recording issue with our last episode with our working round moms.
Working round moms.
I can't even talk.
Our round table of mothers.
Yes, our working mothers round table episode. So we have rescheduled that. We are doing it the 31st of this month, so January 31st, and it'll be released a few days after that. So look forward to that one. Who we have up next? We got Hudson up next, right?
I think we have Hudson up next.
Hudson Fricky. So yeah. Anyways,
Fricky
y'all.
Or Frick? Fricky.
I've heard it both ways.
And I'm it's really sad because he's my coach.
That'll be your first.
I say Fricky or
question.
Frickle or Frickle or
either way.
He has a whole story about it.
Yeah,
it's better to let him say it.
We're excited to have him on. But anyways, y'all, you heard it here.
Apogee Podcast.